Good morning, good afternoon, good afternoon. I'm back, and yeah, I'm just waiting for Yasin. I hope everybody is well. Um, so we're just waiting. Just waiting. Good afternoon, good afternoon. I'm sure I did say half past 12, don't we? Is it half past 12?
Oh, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Steve. Oh, no.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to let you talk, and
Oh, okay.
then is that all right for a minute?
Y- y- for a minute, yeah. And we have a discussion, shall we? Or
Okay.
well, I can bring you back
Yeah,
in.
yeah. So I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. So what you talking about today then? Yeah.
I
What
don't
you
know. I
want to talk
thought
about?
it's the autumn equinox today, which is quite an interesting point in the year balance. I thought I might talk about balance, and I also thought, because obviously the Queen's funeral has only just happened. Um, I think there's something here about how our link with our mothers and grandmothers and that line and that consistency. And I just thought it'd be an interesting thing to touch upon.
Okay. So
But
tell us about everything. Go on, tell us.
can I start? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Carry on.
Hello, everybody. Today is the autumn equinox. It happens once a year and is the opposite time of year to the spring equinox, around about March the 20th, the vernal equinox. And what the equinoxes do, the word equinox means equal night, equal day and night. That's where the word equinox, or nox from the Latin meaning night. Um, and I think it's quite an important time of the year where we can get a new sense of balance with ourselves, along with nature. So whether you're living in the northern or southern hemisphere, it's still the equinox, and it's not unusual at this time to feel that slight wobble, if you like, about health-wise and emotions, because our bodies come from nature. I think you'd agree with me that, Steve. I mean, our souls, which I believe in, come from elsewhere, our connection with the universal spirit or God. But our bodies come from nature. And I think our bodies really feel at this time of the year the need for maybe a bit more of a clear out. Certainly they feel like having to readjust. And it's been proven in research, because I love my research, that
you do, yeah.
at the autumn equinox, the nervous system undergoes very measurable changes. They've actually researched this at Yale University in America. And it's not unusual to feel, I know we've had a sudden, in England, of course, we've had a sudden shift of weather from very hot to it's been quite cold at times. We don't know quite where we're coming and going, but leaving that aside, it's quite normal at this time to feel a little bit more, if not unwell, but off kilter. Or little colds, things of that kind. It depends what your health factor is anyway, how it affects you. And the nervous system or anxiety can come up more. And I always remember my grandmother, certainly, but also it's old sort of folklore that they say the blood changes on the autumn equinox. Is a change of the blood within the body. And you think, what does that mean? But that's a little bit of research and that as well gone into it. So I think this is a very valuable time to looking after our own bodies, looking after our own needs more. And in astrological terms, because as you know, I'm an astrologer, all about our link with nature, with the heavens, with our source. I think that this time of year marks the beginning of the sign of Libra, which the symbol of Libra is the scales, getting the balance. We weigh things.
Yeah.
And Libra is very much about getting that kind of understanding of the importance of the balance between self and others. I mean, we're here on this planet very much to learn how to relate. We're flung or amongst people of all types, of all kinds. Sometimes we have no choice, and we have to learn how to cooperate, relate, or walk away. And the Libra energy we've just entered today for the next 4 weeks or so is that of understanding that cooperation, and even with conflict or confrontation, how that can be creative. It doesn't have to be isolate and divide. Yeah. So I always say that my little pet saying is that people aren't less important than us. They're not. We are here to be of service as well. I really believe that. But we're also here to be of service to ourselves. So people aren't less important than us, but they're not more. And it's like the oxygen analogy on a plane. You put your own mask on before you help the person next to you or your child. And this is a lovely time period for getting that balance, stepping back a little and weighing up. Are you giving too much attention to others or to yourself? How do you have a more dynamic approach to relationship in general? And that doesn't just mean your partner, or your work partner. It's the other out there. Because when I think we perhaps try and please everybody, it's like a souffle, it tends to sink in the middle. So I don't know how many of you are sort of feeling that at all. And sometimes our bodies will tell us, come on, you need a little bit of a rest. You're going to have a little bug, you're going to have a little cold, you're going to be extra tired. You're going to rest a little. And you say, but the world won't get on without me. It does. It really does. And yeah, it doesn't it, Steve? How have you been feeling lately? Have you, and can you relate to any of that?
Yeah, I've just been there, and I've been feeling so yeah, I've been feeling some of that. Yeah, but the trouble is, though, for some people to weighing up and everything, it's very difficult because we just had the Queen died, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes,
now we're going into kind of like, and the trouble is, people at the moment, say like, because some people were, I remember when, I was born in 1969, so, I was a babe, but I just kind of like, when somebody goes out of your life, you do miss them.
Yeah.
And the trouble is the balance of life. We've got to be kind of like careful what we're doing. If that
Yeah.
makes
It's
any sense at all.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, it's a good point actually to talk about, I think, collectively what the, the the death, and they have used the word death, which I think a lot of people shy away from. They say we've lost somebody, somebody's passed on,
Yeah,
and the word death has been used, and death takes many forms. We feel a death of a lifestyle, a death of the old sense of self, um, death of a relationship, and it's quite a strong word. Um, to relate with. But a lot of things I think feel have come out of this. I mean, I all my life I was born at the end of 1951. I actually was born just before the Queen was coronated. So, but I think it's been all my life. It's been all my life, and I think consistency. She's been given the word steadfastness, dedication,
yeah,
loyalty, commitment, duty, but steadfastness, and that's something that a lot of people um, are learning more about through this. I feel because it's she's always been there. Now we know because death is sanitized a great deal in the Western world. The Eastern world, East has a very different relationship to it. And I do feel the West generally has got to get a better relationship with death. And of course, faith, whether one's a Christian, um, belong to another religion, or just believes that there's a soul and there's an afterlife, which I certainly do. Um, we've got to get a better relationship with it because things do change. And with Queen Elizabeth, moving on, dying, it's brought up a lot for people, surprisingly so. People who are anti monarchist, um, even atheists, whatever the case may be, it's really, and some people have very profound experiences standing by her coffin, in that day, that big queue. And I
yeah.
talked to people who did. Now, I think that this sense of something isn't going, people said, well, we never thought she'd go. And they knew that's not true, but that's what they felt. She was there, steadfast. Now we've all had things in our life where either either we have had somebody who's been there for us continually in our personal lives, or perhaps we don't know that experience at all. But either way, it's brought it home to us. And for many people, it's also brought up the loss of a mother or grandmother or major female in their life, and maybe regret that perhaps they didn't have a better relationship with them, or just that loss, whether it was 20 years ago or last week. So I think it has brought up a tremendous amount. A big part of human nature, Steve, I feel, is also about belonging, the sense of community. And in some
Oh yeah,
areas of the world,
definitely.
don't you think so? The family unit,
Yeah,
what we call the nuclear, split up a lot nowadays. And people move on, move out and move on in their lives. And they don't always stay in touch much with family, which is quite sad. And that sense of respect, even if you don't like your parent, the respect that you come into this life, that they put food on the table for you, all those kinds of things, that day to day scenario. Because I know I took my mum a lot for granted in the 50s, 60s. She was born in
I don't.
1919. She was just there.
I just think we don't appreciate, our
Mm,
parents, or for what we got now, because
yes.
there's other people who are suffering in the world, and we're just going by and thinking, oh, well, all right, everything's all right.
Mm. Yeah, we have this mentality that nothing's going to change and we have to think positively. And there's so much so-called self-help out there, or help, about being positive, and the shadows of life. I mean, this time of the year, the balance in the northern hemisphere, we're going into the winter, the autumn winter, and it is nature is going to sleep a little bit. But I do believe our souls, I'm going to call it our souls, can be very alive at this time, to be
Yeah,
much more aware, and also to be aware that light and dark shadows are a part of life. While we're alive, we all have a shadow. When we're not alive, we have no shadow. So the shadow is important to recognize what we don't express, where our fears are, where our griefs are. But the main thing is about this sense of belonging over this time period. It's brought people together, even all over the planet. And people said in the queue, waiting to walk by the Queen's coffin, how they felt the kindness from people, the camaraderie, even made new friends. This is something we don't get in day-to-day life. There's such a sense of isolation. So with her
yeah,
passing, I'm going to use the word passing now, um, it has changed people, I think. It's changed people. And the Queen herself would say she was a shy person. She was an ordinary person who had an extraordinary life. But she, those qualities, the sterling qualities that she represented, rather than just ambition or celebrity status and glamour, all that, I think people are realizing are important. And as you said, to appreciate our backgrounds, even if they haven't been easy, or the family members now. Because we do live in such a busy world and we often forget until it's almost too late.
yeah, yeah. That's it. Yeah, we do, don't we?
Yeah,
You know,
we really do.
I think the trouble is though. I think the trouble is we get so busy with
Mm,
life itself, but we don't concentrate on ourselves. You know what I mean? We
yes,
need to concentrate on ourselves and the inner being of ourselves too, because it's not just like being kind of like it's like spiritual kind of healing. Say, you know, we all need to
yes,
rest. We all need to kind of like you know, take a minute away from our busy lives and everything,
yeah,
and say, okay, we're gonna calm down, and just kind of, and have time for ourselves, you know. And
yes,
sometimes it's difficult to say. Sometimes we have to say no to people. That's what I've learned for the last few weeks.
yeah,
When you're going
good.
around kind of, and I think we need to do that. But with what you do, with kind of like astrology and everything,
Uh-huh.
do you get kind of a sense of like sometimes that do you when you look into astrology think that sometimes there is more sadness in the world to come, or do you think because the other day no, it's funny, isn't it? Because the other day they said in the news or in the papers they said, oh, we found new planets and stuff. So how would that fit in with our astrology today?
Mm. Good point. Good question. I don't know if they found new planets in our solar system because I think we're like cells within cells. We've got cells in our body. Um, we have a sense of we're a cell on the planet. This is talking about the nature planet, the body side of it, and
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
planet is a cell in the solar system. So there's a kind of a combination here. So I'm not saying things outside our solar system are less important, but I think we're born into this solar system, into on this planet, in our bodies, with our cells, and
yeah,
therefore
yeah,
that was
yeah,
very
yeah.
important. So I don't know if they found new planets in our solar system, but they are finding things outside. Now, obviously, until the 1700s, only 7 planets, if you like, were known, and the outermost one was Saturn. Why? Because you could see it with the naked eye, and there were no sort of telescopes in that way back then, astronomical equipment to see beyond Saturn. But interestingly enough, in India, in Hinduism, they always said there were 12 planets, and they obviously when almost like the next ones would come, and those centuries, and of course it did, because in the 1700s, Uranus was discovered, and the 1800s, Neptune was discovered, and in 1930, I remember that exact date, 1930, Pluto was discovered. Now they've demoted Pluto to
1930.
1930, yeah, which was interesting because Pluto represents, in psychological terms, our power base. Interestingly enough, with the Queen, they said she had soft power, which I thought was a beautiful expression. And I've worked long and hard at having gentle power, because when people are very um, over the top, they're very plutocratic, they're very bossy, they're into power trips. This isn't proper power; it's negative power. And also, when we hand our power over to others, like people can be bullies to us, we often are quite powerful inside, but we don't know how to use it and hand them that power. I mean, I experienced that at
Yeah,
school.
yeah,
And I think
yeah. I did. Yeah,
understand our power, because above all, though, Steve, we can be afraid of our power. When people really feel angry, they can kill. They may be a good person, but it goes over the top, and people can be very afraid of their power. And Pluto is always seen as a planet of power. And interestingly enough, when it was discovered, we had the rise of the dictators in Europe. We had the rise of psychotherapy, the exploration of the inner world, the depths. We also had, obviously, leading up to the dropping of the atom bomb and discovery of plutonium, which is incredibly difficult to store. And so at that time, people born around about that time are very aware much more of how usage of power was. And those three outer planets, we call them the outer planets, they're slow moving, are very much linked with changes in society. And above all, Steve, they mirror who we are. They mirror things on Earth. They're not causing it. I've never thought the planets cause anything. They mirror. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so these very slow moving planets, Pluto takes 250 years to go through the signs of the zodiac. So it goes around your own birth chart once in 250 years. Yeah, I know. And Uranus takes 84 years and Neptune takes 165 years. But when they obviously transit over a particular point in our birth charts based on when we're born, they can indicate important metamorphoses, transformations in our life. So
So what?
I think,
So the stars. Sorry, Yazzie. So the stars then. What can the stars tell us then? Or is it just a planet?
well, the stars, the planets move through the signs of the zodiac along the ecliptic, the sun's path.
Yeah.
So the signs, it's almost like you have a character. Like if I'd say, Mars, which is the energy of assertion. We've got a very interesting scenario going on with Mars. It's staying in one sign
Yeah.
of the zodiac, Gemini, for 7 months now, which is going to be a real lesson in how we communicate. Do we react? Do we respond? How do we discuss, debate things? And that, it's going to be interesting, particularly with social media, how many eruptions there might be. But it's an opportunity to learn the skills of language and communication these months. But Mars is an example. Mars is about how we assert. It wants to be direct. It wants to be decisive. In Gemini, it's going to come out through, because Gemini rules communication and the media, social media, ideas. It's going to come out through that. So it's like wearing a costume. Yes. And where it is when you're born, where Mars is very much about how you use your own male energy, your assertion, your anger, how you deal with conflict. And the sign it's in, the zodiac sign, the star, shows in what way you do it. Yeah. In what way you do it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm always learning something new from you. Always. Every time. It's always something new from you. Brilliant. Can we just
Thank you.
ask a few questions on my
Sure.
radio? There's a couple of people. Hi Brenda, how are you? I hope you enjoying your holiday. She's asking, my birthday is in December, um, December the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me? Can you tell me anything that's going to happen on the 17th?
Yeah,
Ooh.
it's your birthday. It's your birthday. It's
Yeah, yeah,
you're a Sagittarius, Brenda. That starts because each year can vary within a 24-hour period. Sagittarius starts about November the 22nd, 23rd, and completes on December the 21st, 22nd, when the sun enters Capricorn, the next door sign. No, one would have to look, unfortunately, at the whole chart for something like that. I think as a Sagittarian, which is in every sign of the zodiac is ruled by a planet, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which is our biggest planet. It's expansive. It's naturally by nature optimistic. It likes to be direct, and it likes to help. It likes to, in a way, educate people in some manner. So you've definitely got your own ideas. So in December, I'm just thinking where the planets are. Bear with me a moment. See, this is my little book called The Ephemeris 2022. And so December the 17th.
yeah. We were going to talk about that.
Yes, of course, the sun is. The moon that day, Brenda, will be in Libra, and the moon changes sign every 2 days. But this year it's going to be in Libra for the day. And Libra is very, again, as I was talking about earlier, very much about relationship, how we get on with others. And Libra likes to be tactful. It likes to be diplomatic. Where Sagittarius likes to say it as it is. So it's an opportunity day for you to be able to use your communication powers in some manner. which may open up new friendships for you, different way of relating if you've got a partner. Yeah, so I think it can be a day where letting yourself receive more might be good. I don't know whether you're good enough at that generally, but to receive more. And it can be, whether you like to celebrate your birthday or not everybody does. It can be a day of having a little celebration, doing something, I'm going to use the word elegant, but at least with some grace, with some beauty. Yeah. But that's the most I can tell you just from that, without looking at all the planets on the day of your birth and so forth.
There you go. That is, I'm a Sagittarius too,
I
so that
know.
is very good. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we all. Um, Luke wants to know, uh, if I if I want to get involved in astrology, is it
Mhm.
difficult to do? Good question.
Oh my goodness, I'm still learning, Luke, after 43 years of doing it professionally. Now, don't let that put you off for one iota, one moment. Um, there are many ways of going about it. There are schools of astrology, correspondence courses. That definitely went on over Zoom during lockdown. There are one I can recommend strongly is a London School of Astrology. Frank Clifford is a lovely man who runs it. You can learn from books. I'm a dunce at maths, so I can add up numbers quickly. But in normal maths, I'm hopeless. And at school, he wouldn't even let me do a CSE in those days, let alone a GCE. And when I took this up and learned it, there were no computers, certainly no computer programs in the late 70s for this. So I had to do it all by hand. I thought, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, logarithms, maths. Do you know what? I wanted to do it, Luke, so I did it. But nowadays, there's groups you can go to and learn from. Um, it's easy just to pick up bits of information, and the art is to synthesize all those components in a birth chart, that moment in time, and that's what one learns. I don't know where you live, but if you are near London, and you can warrant the cost, doing a course with a good teacher is wonderful. And and it's just such an exploration of life, just such an exploration. So, and if you're not in London,
Gosh.
you can always Google. Astrology classes, courses in your area. It depends whether you prefer to do it online or in person. You know, we're all different and what we can relate to best. But go for
Gosh.
it.
Okay. Um,
Go for it.
Victoria wants to know: are there any planets at this moment in time that you can go and visit? Um, are you one? Because you always do sometimes. No, I'm not winding you up. I just was told that you can pay to go to a planet. Oh,
Oh, yeah, Mars,
don't
isn't it?
believe in
The
that.
moon.
Don't, yeah, yeah, don't.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
there are
don't.
people, I
No.
think they're putting a waiting list for it, but you can imagine what that costs.
Yeah.
Do you know, maybe I'm a bit old fashioned, but I think this blue planet, they call it the green planet, this is such a beautiful planet. And I was thinking, well, would you want to go and even live on another planet? You have to have oxygen, you'd have to have all sorts of conditions. And of course, sometimes, I don't mean you, Victoria, but people feel rather than die, they can just go somewhere else to another planet. Rather, it's like people who want to be, you know, what's the word, when they're frozen, you know, after death, and they'll be resurrected later on
Oh,
when they've
yeah,
got a cure for
yeah.
the illness. Not convinced about that. Again, going back to what I said about the fear of death, and I think also what's happened with the Queen's death is a fact of really living life, looking at our values, reassessing what is important to us,
Yeah.
and of course our family line. And I know some people have had dreadful family backgrounds. I'm fully aware of that, with abuse and everything else. Um, but even so, I think we've come to this planet through a vehicle, through a woman's body, and it's about honouring that in some respect. It's about honouring that,
Yeah.
and also looking. And we're so
It's
bad at it in our
remarkable. Yeah.
society. Yeah, looking at our elders in general. You know, we're very poor at that compared to Asia and places. We don't honour them enough, and they're isolated. I mean, in my 20s, I was just doing a sort of mainstream job and living in Bath, and finished at 5 o'clock on the dot. And my interests, I had some social interests, of course, and boyfriends, but was doing voluntary work with older people. I had the time, and I felt how isolated and lonely they actually got, you know. particularly when fear sets in. And I'm not saying we should all be doing that, but I think just to look at the importance of honouring our ancestors, honouring our elders. So coming full circle back to that
yeah,
again, and really, really honouring this planet we're living on as well. But yeah, you can actually queue up to join and pay a lot of money to go one day to another planet. I'm sure that will happen, whether it may be the moon or Mars, I think they're talking about. Yeah.
yeah. Good luck, and if you go, yeah, yeah. Good luck if you go. Yeah. Um, what else have we got here? Filippo wants to know, do you, Yasin, you talk about astrology a lot. You must enjoy it. What is the biggest achievement you ever
Oh,
achieved in astrology?
lovely question. It depends what you mean in the eyes of the world or making money. Um, I've been on the speaker circuit in London, not so much now, but I was before lockdown. And I loved talking about a very complex subject and simplifying it and applying it, whether to business, to health, to whatever, in everyday words. To me, to be able to use a language and translate it. I always wanted, and I'm sorry if this sounds a bit precocious, when I was a child, I always wanted a purpose. It wasn't about making money or being famous. Money never came into the equation for some reason.
Yeah,
And I wanted a purpose. And how I found it, in a sense, was completely different to whatever I could have imagined. And I think using astrology as a toolbox, I use that practical expression, to
yeah,
help people, for them to understand themselves and their, what I call their soul journey as well. Not fortune telling,
yeah,
to
yeah.
understand themselves. And my
But
greatest successes, if you wanted, are when I get wonderful feedback. Like somebody the other day came to me and she actually came here, which is nice. And she said afterwards, she's in business, and she said, it gave me so much closure on many things that I needed. And she came up with that for herself.
yeah,
Because a discussion comes up and
well
people
done.
find their own answers. And I have been on TV, and stuff like that. And of course, it's nice. But I think it's
Yeah,
about
yeah,
helping people. And, it's a label, astrology, but I think it's a way of helping people, listening, counselling,
yeah,
and getting them on their map about where's that map taking them, the navigation of it. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. It's
yeah,
nice
so I
when
haven't
you
made
go
myself
it's,
I'm sorry, missed that.
yeah, it's nice when you go on a new journey too.
Oh,
In your
yeah.
spiritual life too, isn't it?
A spiritual life, for me,
When
is
you meet.
very important. The spiritual side of
Yeah,
things. I believe in a soul. I do meditate. I think we've got to be here on this planet, and we have an opportunity to be here. And it's not about being perfect. I think people get that so wrong, and they beat themselves up. And it'd be awful to reach the end of one's life, and one's higher self or God or whatever, metaphorically speaking, would say, "Whose life have you led? Why are you so hard on
mm,
yourself? You haven't been so hard on other people as you are on yourself." And I know conditioning plays a huge part in that and background. But at the same time, as I said earlier about power, gentleness, soft power, saying it's okay to know who you are, not to put up with nonsense, but to do it with a soft touch, a gentle touch, but to still know you are significant. You are equally important to others. And I think that's what the Queen did as
yeah,
well, regardless of
yeah,
that position she was born into and apparent wealth and everything. Um, she kept with her simple values, her Christian faith. She was, it was very important to her.
yeah,
So
yeah,
whether you're
yeah, yeah,
Christian or not, the point is to have your values, your faith in something bigger than yourself, and to be gentle, to be gentle on yourself. I think it's so important.
yeah. We can learn from each other, can't we?
Well, exactly. That's what we're here for, partly. And if we immediately push things away and say, "No, I don't agree with you," and this and that, we're not learning. We're not learning.
Nah. Tell
Yeah.
us about your book. Tell us about
Oh, hmm.
Time Catcher.
Yeah. Well, I
Because
always
when
wanted
I
to.
sorry, go on, carry on.
No, sorry, it's a sort of a pause, and it's something going slightly wrong with the audio.
Yeah,
Never mind.
delay.
Um, I always wanted to write, and as a child, I wrote copious novels, which never got published. I wrote articles in magazines during my working life, and then I was approached by somebody I was a radio host for about timing, and I thought I can write a book about timing I didn't want to write star sign books, and I didn't want to write for astrologers. And so I just wrote this book, The Time Catcher, of how we are through rhythms and cycles related to one another, to nature, to the planets, to life itself, to music. And the importance, was something you said, Steve, about taking time out of pausing, and how our brains are the
Yeah.
only thing that don't pause. Yeah. So I write a lot about those kind of things and proportions in nature and what we call sacred geometry. There's something some of you may have heard of called the Fibonacci series, the pi, the golden mean, and its proportions, which we get in our body and actually are all everywhere in nature. So when we walk in nature, like I walked up in the woods and the hills over there above my town the other day, and I was just with the trees, old trees, and nobody else around. And I could feel that sacred geometry. I could feel the healing power. And I came back a different beast.
Yeah.
My brain had completely slowed. So my book is very much about getting us in touch with our inner timekeepers, our natural diarists, our natural calendars, which have got nothing to do with the calendar on the wall where we fill it up and think, phew, the world hasn't forgotten me, I'm busy. And then the time comes and we think, well, I wish I'd taken that time out. So sometimes it's good to have the gaps, to have the pauses, like music does and dance does. And ideally conversation does, yeah. So it's there, I've got my book out, it's on my website.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. With kind of like your second book, yeah, let's talk about your second book.
Shall we? You're going to tell me about it?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to find out what was the idea from that, because was it the same as the Time Catcher, or was it something different?
Well, I'm laughing because I haven't done a second book. I haven't done a second book. No, that's my first one published. No, I've got a CD. I've got a CD, which I gave to you, Steve, To Touch the Face of the Stars. And it's a journey with music and my speaking voice to go through the planet.
Oh, sorry.
But you know what? It has a booklet in with it.
Sorry. Yeah.
It has a booklet in with it.
Yeah. Tell us about your CD. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, CDs, unfortunately, are going out of fashion. Many people don't have a CD player, and laptops don't have a thing in the side. I still have a lot of them, and I really want to give them to people, because I did this back in 1998, and I wrote it in half a day. And it's where these planets, what they represent within us, and the music to accompany it, so you can find out which parts of you, whether it's your warrior, your creative side, your dreamer, your traveler, your inner critic, or many things, how they are. And it's a kind of meditation with music, and you can actually find out which ones you're comfortable with or not. And therefore, if you're not, to start to develop them a little, not the inner critic, but to overcome that one. And what I'm doing, and this is really interesting, because after we finished, I'm meeting somebody and we're going to actually download it onto my computer. So it'll be streamed with the booklet as well, and people can have more access to it. And people, when they've heard it, they've actually found it very healing and very helpful. So it's very simple. And you know what? The best things in life are simple. And to really know, if you really know a subject, means you can make it simple. That's the acknowledgement that you know your subject. But no, thank you, Steve. Sorry about that. I always forget it is actually a book.
No, it's my fault. No, it's my fault. Becky wants to know. Becky wants to know about, if you wasn't going to be an astrologer, what would you like to do?
Well, again, I'm bringing this back to the Queen, because she said if she hadn't been born into her role, she wanted to be an actress, and apparently she was a wonderful mimic. Lots of stories about that. But coming back to me, well, I wanted to be an explorer. I mean, I was an outdoor person. I was a climber, parachuting, karate. I loved the outdoors, but I wasn't physically that strong and much skinnier than I am now. And I also wanted to be an actress. And I did do LAMDA, the drama route. I could go back in time. I think the beauty, the richness of what I'm doing is being self-employed as well. And although that has its downsides and difficulties, and you have to live with faith a little bit when work goes quiet, um, I think it's the beauty of being able to do things your way. So, yes, I wanted to be a physical explorer. And what I ended up doing, of course, was exploring the heavens, not by visiting another planet, but through the language of astrology, the stories behind the planets and stars, and exploring people's inner landscapes and maps. So in a way, I brought that about. And I suppose the acting side, I've done talks and workshops, made them experiential. So people start to feel their charts within them. And I've even worked with theatre companies in quite a few countries, astrodrama, so people can act out their birth charts, they can direct it, and they can see where their imbalances are. It's very difficult to describe, but I think in a way, the things I wanted to do, I'm doing, but in a different form. And please listen to this, and who's listening and watching, that nothing is ever wasted. Whatever you did or didn't do can come back in a new way in the future.
Oh
If you didn't
yeah, yeah.
complete something, I
It
do
always
believe that in a
repeats
strange
itself, doesn't it?
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to be an explorer, and I always wanted to help people, but I wasn't going to be a nurse or teacher. Which, when you're born in the 50s,
No.
everybody pushes you into, or being a florist or hairdresser. And I thought, there's got to be more to life than this, although they're valuable jobs, you know. And
Yeah.
I suppose my voluntary work
Thank
was
you
so
very much.
important.
Thank you very much for Thank you very much for promoting my book. Thank you. You just said it's got to be more to life than this. That's the
Yeah.
title of my book.
Well, I can promote your book. Steve's book is absolutely amazing. You know, I've got it somewhere. You know, it's not, of course, it's not in here. I moved everything. But your book is amazing. I read it in one evening, one night. I know my friend Fiona, who's
Have
on
you?
later, also did. Oh, yes. Really, really
Yeah.
valuable about dealing with difficulties and body image and everything and how we eat. And I think that there have been so many
Yeah.
books and things written about this, but wrote what you wrote, that book is just remarkable. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
really
Thank
recommend
you.
it to anybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Um, in your life so far, what would you like to? You know, we're all getting older now and everything. But what would say, what one thing would you like to achieve that you haven't done yet?
Well, that's a very interesting question because I reached 70 last November and I sort of felt I'd ticked all those boxes. I wasn't depressed. Um, I felt like having a book published, being a speaker, went to Tibet to do voluntary work. That had always been my dream. Not the Tibet that China has, but the bit it doesn't have, which is another story, in South Tibet.
Mm.
And I've done so many things. I've had a very, very full life. And I just
Mm.
wanted not to have it all. I just wanted to do these things. And I'm not sure at the moment. For me, I feel it's a bit of people say don't use the word blank, but that's what it feels like. The well has to fill up again. And I've done my work 43 years and I'll continue to do it. My clients would like to come to me. I am going next year to do some voluntary work in southern India, which is something I want to go back to. I've done before. Another story.
Right.
I'd like to perhaps do another book, do more media work. But I can't, you know, when I'm asked that question now, it's really hard for me because the old me
Are
was
you content?
immediately,
Are you content in your life now? Are
yeah,
you content in your life?
I am, but I'm not good at just being, you know, there's a whole thing about once you just be. I've always wanted a purpose. I've got this adrenaline side of me. I like the challenge. I like the
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
And I haven't got that at the moment. So, but you know, we all, again, it comes back to pausing. We all kind of think it has to fill up our diaries. And I have actually taken time out to say no to things, to actually take more time for me, which is also quite hard because if you've got
Yeah.
to earn money, and I need to earn money and pay bills and things, it's always that worry, you know, what if it doesn't come
Yeah.
back in? But of course it does. I think if we have a calling, and I love that word, a calling, and we're humble with
Yeah.
it, and we feel we've got that God-given gift in some way, then I think it will always come our way. Our needs will be met. I do believe that. Though I have to say, even after over 4 decades, I can have doubts. So just being would be a wonderful thing, but it's not part of my nature just to be. Just to be. I'd love to have a new purpose,
Yeah.
and it has to involve helping
Yeah.
people as well. And I've told I've got quite a nice speaking voice, and I might be doing some voiceovers at some point. Because I think sound can be healing as colour. You know, we talked about colour the other week, and I think things like colour and sound and music,
Yeah.
because my music is my biggest love. You know, I'm all about music, and I'm a singer, but a bit lazy at the moment. So,
I was
um,
going to mention that, but I didn't want to embarrass you about that.
well, I'm not going to. I'm not going to sing. No, I was going to be doing a
Uh,
black tie event in November, and I was getting really nervous. Am I up to this? And now it's been moved to next year, so that's okay. No, I think I'd like to do a lot more music. To be without music, I mean, somebody said about the Queen's
mm,
funeral how different it would be without music.
yeah.
Yeah, I know there wasn't a lot of colour, but that's not the point. It wasn't, you know, but the music was a
Yeah. I
huge
think she
part of
loved
it.
music. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And she was born
Definitely.
under the sign of
Really.
Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, which is the creative arts. And she was highly creative within
Do you know
the
what? You're
structure.
amazing. Sorry. You're amazing. Getting back to age and everything, you said to me this now, like, you turned 70. But
Yeah,
honest,
71.
guys, honest, if you meet this wonderful lady, right, you will never think she is 70 or 71. You think she's
Yeah.
probably, honestly, she is amazing and she's a lovely person to me. And I'm so grateful that I've met her.
Oh, Stephen, I'm
In
glad
your
to have found
kind of,
you.
in your, in your kind of life so far, I wasn't going to mention this, but I thought I will.
Go on,
Are there
Sagittarius.
any men in your life at this moment in time,
No, not
or
on this.
don't
No,
you need a man in your life?
love it. No, no, and that's not an advert either. That's not an advert. No, I've been very fortunate with love. I mean, I've had crosses, grief, but I think it's better to have loved than not. And I don't believe death is the end. That when death occurs suddenly, I had a great love of my life who died suddenly. That was 18 years
Oh,
ago.
right, sorry.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and you know what? I can still feel him. I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate to have had that. I've been quite lucky with love in my life. Fortunate. I don't like the word lucky.
Yeah.
Fortunate, and I've got male friends. I love living on my own. I've got wonderful friendships. If it happens, that's fine. But what I don't
Mm,
like, I think a lot of people can get very needy on relationships. And I'm trying not to judge that. Judgment is something I've got to work on sometimes. But um, men or women can be very needy, and I like somebody, and I've always had that in my life, a man who's independent, you know, got his own friends.
yeah,
I've got mine, we have friends together. And
yeah,
because I've been a traveler, you know, you travel. I used to travel with my work a lot to Asia and America. I'd be away a few weeks when I was married, and I'd come back and then could share the experiences. But a lot of people find that really hard. They have to be very joined at the hip. And I think to find
yeah,
somebody who not gives me freedom, I've got my freedom, but of a similar ilk, you know, it's not always that easy. And if it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
happen, I've had my quota, fine. If not, then it's there sometimes. And I'm 71 in November, early November, and feels a dance like better than reaching 70. 71's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're single out there, let me know. I will pass it on to you.
Oh,
Um,
no, not looking, not looking.
no, I'm only joking.
I know
I'm
you
only
are. How
joking,
funny.
honestly.
No, it's a good question. You know, I mean, I have been fortunate. I had a good married life. I haven't got children, but no, I enjoy male company, female company. You know, I just enjoy people.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
you do. You certainly do. Um, then with what would you say today if somebody wanted to kind of like get involved in astrology and kind of like wanting to look into
mm.
the planets and everything? What would you say to them?
What about learning it or knowing more?
Yeah, they're there and getting involved. Yeah.
Well, that's what you. I think I forget who it was who asked that question earlier. I think it was a man. I think. Um,
Mm,
I said it is when I learned it. There was the Astrological Association, the Astrological Lodge. There's now, but I really would recommend the London School of Astrology. In different cities, there are
right.
courses you can go along to. Yes, and you can read. They're very good books, not just on star signs, which to me, is very limited. The sign we're born under. You've got your moon sign, which is your mothering side, your early years, your home life. Mercury, how you think best. Are you analytical? Are you more visual or practical thinker? Mars, how you express your, as we talked earlier, assertion or anger or decision making. Jupiter, about traveling, the higher mind. There's many, many things. So you have to take everything together. And learning from books is not easy. I did, and I also did a course. And in my early days, I was doing handwritten charts and then tapes and CDs and now files. You have to move with the times.
Yeah.
If you're really interested, there's an awful lot on the web as well. Be very wary.
Yeah.
I've got no agenda on this of having cheapy, quick readings. And people say, I know a little bit about astrology. Let me do your chart. You don't have to believe what they say, but also, it can actually be quite damaging what you hear. And to have somebody who's experienced is very important. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. Thank you very much, Yasin, for the
Okay,
interview.
thank you, Steve. And
And
it's been a wonderful interview
thank
and
you for your
session
time.
together. And thank you very,
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
And thank you, my watchers, listeners, to us listening and watching to Steve and I. And I look forward to coming back again soon.
Yeah, and don't
Bye for
forget,
now.
folks, we got Fiona on Saturday. Bye
I know
bye.
I can't watch her, unfortunately, but best of luck with all that. And she's wonderful. Okay.
Yes, she is.
Thank you. Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye.